The old man real. The old man real. The old man real. The old man real. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality was stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to instead. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Builds. And in a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by Joe and 8 Center. We're going to be talking Orgonites today. With that said, let's get into it.
Okay, so do you want me to just dive in?
Yeah, dive right in.
Okay, so the last time we were talking about mostly the principles of how it works on the mechanical level.
Mm-hmm.
Today I want to go into how Orgonite works at the metaphysical and reality level of your own human experience. So in order to do that, I'm going to split it up into 2 major parts, which is the material side and the 12, what I call the 12 elements of life, and then the metaphysical side, which is what you touched on a couple of months back, Joe, with the light body, the embodiment of the light body and alignment. So which one do you want to start with?
Start with like light body activation and how it works with that. That sounds cool.
Sounds like a good one.
Okay, so there's a fairly famous chart about how consciousness relates to different levels of health. Like depression is all the way down at the bottom, then you've got grief and stuff like that. And that's the spectrum of health. And what that spectrum is, I've just sent you a picture, Joe, on that. If you want to forward it on and bring it up. The spectrum of health relates to the alignment of the soul as it is manifesting in physical format. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So the more of your light body you carry, the more of the physical body has to be in alignment. So if you step out of alignment, you lose those abilities. You lose that embodiment, and your vibration starts getting lower.
Okay.
So that's the root of most illnesses. It's some sort of either energetic or psychological trauma or something like that in the physical plane that lowers your capacity to hold access to the light body. Right?
Okay.
So
it's a dis-ease of the system.
Yes. All disease is an energetic thing. It starts at the energetic level, and they go into this more in the Ayurvedic type of looking at things. The way they look at health, they look at it as the energetic embodiment first, and then that creates sort of a disruption in the physical system, and then it's the disruption that causes the symptoms. So most things, most diseases, they follow a pattern, and it's usually a metaphorical pattern. So if you're holding on to something that you know you shouldn't be holding on to, but you're holding on to it anyway, it's going to manifest these certain types of symptoms. It could be arthritis in the hands, or it could be a lot worse than that, depending on the level. But it all starts from this base energetic disruption, which can, again, like I said, be caused by traumas, psychological traumas as you're growing up as well. So every time you were told as a child that you're doing something wrong, or you had a toy taken away from you, that disrupts the energetic system in the root chakras. It's your survival basis. What your parent is actually telling you on the energetic level is you don't have the right to have anything, to own anything.
Mm.
And all these types of traumas over thousands and thousands of repetitions from parents, from teachers, from police, from anybody in a professional sort of setting, telling you you can't do this, that, and the other, it causes massive disruption, which makes it a lot easier for diseases to manifest physically later in life. You with me so far?
Yes.
Now, is this particular chart and this whole the idea does that also have a basis in like acupuncture and like all the pressure points, like where all the root endings and like the bottom of your feet are and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So the meridian system, what's used in acupressure, and the Indian system, they call it the nadis, or I'm not sure if that's pronounced right, but they all connect to the different chakra systems. And the organs, I think there's about 3 organs connect to each chakra system, or 3 major organs, maybe it's 3 or 4, something like that. So the likes of heart chakra problems are usually going to be connected to the lungs. It's very often the lungs, actually. And stuff like that. They're all connected and manifest through certain organs. So if there's something wrong with your liver, you know it can connect back to a particular chakra. And then from there, you can connect that to a different meridian system, or a series of different meridian systems, depending on how you want to redirect the energy. And Dr. Kareem's biogeometry works on similar principles, only it's a sort of an odd variant of photonics, I think. The meridian system, I think it was a Swiss scientist spent about 25 years looking to prove whether or not the meridian system was a real thing, because it was in academic sciences, it's just dismissed completely, even to this day. So what he found was they're actually nano-sized tubes, and their only purpose is to carry light. That's all they do. So imagine those as fiber optic cables at a millionth of a millimeter sort of scale, and they just pulse light all day long. So from the light body energetic pathway, as you're manifesting onto Earth, you imagine that white light being split into the spectrum. Right? Earth is the prism in this sort of analogy.
Okay.
Your light is split, which creates the body. The chakras are split in the meridians, which creates the energetic system as a more collective sort of whole thing. And then, for all we know, there's possibly smaller channels, after that sort of scale. I'm not sure about that.
So that color line going up and down too, now that I'm looking at it closely, the colors that are represented in there are actually in order of the chakras, top to bottom.
Yes. And you might have noticed this in Hermetics too. We actually go through cycles of development as we age. So as you first come onto this planet, your first needs are the survival. It's getting your mother's milk, and it's getting shelter, and that sort of thing. As you start to go into crawling, walking around, you start interacting with other people, which goes into the solar plexus. That's where all your friendships lie. And then from those friendships, you're going up to the heart chakra. which is where love comes in. And then after that, you've got expression. So there's a natural cycle of consciousness development, and it's roughly about every 7 years that your consciousness completely changes because it's going through that cycle over and over and over through your life.
Yeah, well, everything you just said makes total sense because right at the bottom you said survival. Obviously babies need care and not a whole lot else. Just a matter of maintaining that, and then you went up that perfectly. Good and fine. I mean, it's interesting because that's exactly how things unravel. Is that into then relationships, into then knowing how to love and being loved and giving love, and that need of love becomes present, and then you become boisterous at that point, right? And then through that voice you realize that you have an imagination, and that can bring you to spirit, and it is always in that progression. It can be no other way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everything happens for a reason. And there's a lot of spiritual things that seem to happen in cycles of 7.
Yeah, that's interesting. So 7 years old, 14 years old, 21 years old, 28 years old. That seems all right. That's when you change everything. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and there's always a relationship between 7 and 11. And ironically, the average age, lifespan is 77 years old.
I never used to be.
Well, for purposes of this conversation in today's day and age.
It is, yeah. I think 7 is just one of those magical numbers, maybe, or maybe there's some deeper purpose to it, but yeah. We'll just have to accept it for the minute. It works through the light spectrum too, the musical spectrum as well. And there's a calculator you can get actually that calculates by phi ratios. So you can take 2 colors on the hexadecimal or the RGB scale, add them together, and it seems to follow the same cycle, which I find really interesting. It's kind of besides the point on this, but it's just fun that certain ratios and certain numbers play a major role in development and evolution. So, bringing it back, this ease, I was talking about the biogeometry. It works in a slightly different way, I think. Now, if you can look at it as energy pathways, say you get a broken leg falling out of a tree when you're a kid. The scar tissue that's created around the bones and around the flesh is going to create a disruption in the mechanical side of the nervous system. And I think the biogeometry sort of reminds the body what the original system used to work like. So it's sort of a shortcut system, I think.
Okay.
I've no proof on that. That's just my own theory. I've only started studying biogeometry in greater detail, but just thought I'd add that. So, Joe, can you remember when I introduced you to the Orgonites, did it go for your chakras first?
It did, but I was pretty balanced when you showed them to me, just generally.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it did, it did kind of ring the bell, so to speak.
Nathan today went through a chakra cycle. I think it started in the throat, and then it went down to the root and kind of cleared its way back up again. So the whole purpose of that is to get things back in sort of straight alignment.
Okay.
And this is the greater purpose of Orgonite. It is to bring the soul into alignment. It is that simple. This is why it can cure almost everything. Is a misalignment of soul. And it was created by a disruption in our soul purpose, sort of like blueprinted contract for life. You know, if you come here to be a painter and you're stuck behind a desk taking phone calls all day, working for British Telecom or, you know, whoever you guys have got over there, you're not going to be fulfilling your soul purpose. And at a certain point in life, the body is going to realize that it's too late to actually go back. There's no way to achieve this anymore. So that's when it starts with this destruction. It's a self-destruct mechanism because you're too far out of alignment. It's too difficult to go back. All your timeline potentials have collapsed.
Wow, that's interesting. Timeline potentials have collapsed.
Well, can't you just create a new pathway?
And there are methods of practicing jumping timelines. It's usually called quantum jumping. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but there's versions of that in the gateway process, quantum tunneling, quantum jumping.
There's elements of it in there, and you know, I know I don't specifically and only follow Gateway, but in my experience with Gateway, like if that's all you did, you'd certainly have the skill set to be able to, you know, focus on that. What's interesting about timeline shifting is that oftentimes what it does, because there's no way to really just take you and throw you directly into a full-blown new reality, you will shift timelines, but things will start gradually changing around you, gradually. So it's not like you just wake up one day and then all of a sudden it's like, where am I? What is this place? Or something like that. It's just like these set of unusual circumstances that seemingly came out of nowhere because they didn't previously exist in your other set of circumstances. Sort of what it is.
That's how it's usually done. But you can actually accidentally jump too far and wake up with the wrong wife or in the wrong house and with the wrong car and the wrong job. It has happened a few times.
Not to me, it hasn't.
Not to me.
I'll tell you what, actually, one of my last clients from Sweden, he, when I work on the cancer stuff with people, I do it as a team. So one of my friends, one of my best clients as well, he's a doctor, a surgeon. So it's myself, him, and another woman who's more along the herbal sort of side of things, the holistic side of things. And one really interesting timeline thing happened to him. He knew the woman for a number of years, and he had a kid, a male son. And I can't remember.
You never know these days.
It was something like 5 or 7 years old. And they had him on a certain regime for a couple of weeks before I came in with the Orgonites. And it was it was a hexy. So it was about twice the strength of a normal coaster. And by the end of that sort of 2-week session that he had the Orgonite, he didn't have the sun anymore. He completely shifted timelines to where his son didn't exist anymore. He couldn't even remember having a son. It was only me and the girl and the doctor who remember it.
Really?
So his shift in timelines also shifted yours?
No, we remembered it because we'd seen both, but he didn't remember it because he shifted so far into a new one.
What I'm saying is, but in your reality, your timeline must have shifted too, because then where is the sun?
No, because I never met the sun. To me, the sun was effectively an NPC.
Oh,
Got you.
okay.
So it's kind of like a Mandela effect in that way.
Yeah, that's weird, man. That's crazy.
That was the craziest thing that's ever happened so far.
Wow.
And, like,
That's wild. Yeah, you're sitting there working for someone, talking to them about it all, and then all of a sudden it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Wow.
So for him, he didn't remember any of it because he, like, are you familiar with walk-ins?
No.
Okay, a walk-in is when one soul exits the body and another comes in to continue the physical
Okay.
life.
So when you put it like that, I'm familiar with that concept. I know that the soul could actually leave your body during times of like really hard trauma, like just because it just simply can't take it, and basically has to wait for the whole situation to cool down if it's going to return.
Yeah, sort of an astral disjointing, I think that would be. But this is where one consciousness gives the body over to another. So the way I see this with the guy in Sweden, in his son's life, it would have looked like his father died because he was no longer there. That body just disappears from his timeline.
But that didn't actually happen, though, right? Just to him.
It was just to him, but that reality potential had to die off because his awareness was no longer inhabiting that reality.
Okay.
Yeah, that's complex. That gets involved in all like the paradoxical, like the same paradoxes that are involved with like time travel.
So his son one day couldn't just come knocking on the door?
Sorry, say that again, Nathan?
So his son one day just couldn't come knocking on the door because he's gone?
Okay, do you want me to explain how timelines work?
No, I understand that in his mind it's gone. But does that mean he didn't never create the kid?
Oh, no, he did.
Okay.
He was also probably an astronaut, or his actual job that I knew him from was a firefighter. But it doesn't mean in other realities he wasn't also an astronaut, or a cop, or a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, the consciousness, like the soul and the consciousness, can only inhabit one timeline. So,
No, I'm comfortable with all that in the one person. It's the outside people that I'm looking at.
Right. So all the other realities, like he wasn't living in a part of, and the reality where he had a son, that was, according to kind of this example, would have been branched off. Right. So it would have been branched off. And because there was this divergence, his son would exist, but would exist in an alternative timeline that he's not sold in. So
no, I got all that. In his mind, that's the way it works. He jumped, and he's now, this is his focus. He doesn't have those
because they no longer have a shared reality. There would have had to have been a circumstance where the father would have died off. Right. In the son's.
Okay, so that's timeline. What I'm getting at. So would the son also be severed to the father at that point? That's what I'm trying to get at.
In some realities, yes. But all of the potentials always exist. It just depends which one your awareness is focusing on. Like, if you imagine timelines as multiple TV screens. Say you have a wall of 40,000 TV screens. You can only actually focus on one of them at a time. And that's the timeline you're in.
I got it.
But at any one point, if you have the training to do so, or if it accidentally happens, you can turn your focus and watch a different TV screen. It might be that the screen beside it, because something was flashing that caught your eye, or it might be something that's almost behind you. It's so far away. And that's the the bigger jumps where you were a different person entirely. One of my other clients, she knows me. She's seen me in other timelines where I'm teaching the art of Tantra. So I still went into a healing field, but I was working with people instead of the technology I'm working on now.
Okay.
And there's probably other jumps where I never went into it at all.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't want to hold this up. I'm just trying to figure this out. It bothers me. So
it's a whole complex.
The dad has no idea of any of this stuff. He's a different person. Okay, went to a different timeline.
Yeah.
But the son still exists physically in the old timeline. But now if he tries to interact with the father has no idea who he is. So how do you reconcile that?
He wouldn't be there.
He wouldn't be there at all. He'd disappear. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. It would look like he died.
Okay.
Probably from the cancer. You know what I mean? Okay. So in one timeline, he was cured. In the other, he wasn't.
Okay.
But he chose to live out the one where he was.
Okay.
But the one where he was didn't have the sun.
Yeah. I found that, I mean, it's quite mind-blowing, that one, even for me. Like, just as an experience, that's quite unique.
There's a lot of paradoxes in that. It's like if I never met Joe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, something like that. It's just weird.
But in the TV screen that you're watching, the timeline that you're living, you always met Joe.
Yeah. Okay. No.
Right. Except for the one where you're still on with, like, you know, Brandon instead. You know,
maybe.
Oh, yeah. It was Brandon instead of Joe. That's the timeline.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But no, there are certain people, you've probably heard the term soulmates.
Yes.
And you've probably heard it in the approach that only girlfriends, wives, etc. are soulmates. That's absolute shit. Soulmates are anybody who is in your planning session for your incarnation. That means anybody who made a significant conscious difference in your proposed life is a soulmate. They were there in the room whilst you were planning their lives and your lives. It was all done together. That's why it takes hundreds of years to plan an incarnation. Because you how many people have you met in your life that changed the way you think? You've got teachers, parents, girlfriends, friends, enemies. Anybody who made a significant difference was part of your blueprinted life plan.
Right. That boils back down to like soul contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Like the whole reason you're here and the actors in your life, so to speak, like, you know, you're playing dynamic roles for them. They're playing dynamic roles for you.
Yeah.
And what's weird is prior to, you know, incarnation, it's all from this place of care and love. Like there's nothing else there but care and love. So even like the people that are in your life that have caused you the most grief, even if you've never reconciled that grief, like that grief was caused to you out of care and love of the soul contract. It's kind of mind bending to think about.
Oh.
Like they just acted to play that role in your life because they had to.
Oh, they wanted
to. So terrible.
People do tend to incarnate with specific groups, and they tend to incarnate in specific time periods and in specific families. It's all of it's a sort of cluster gathering of experiences. To the purpose of life, when you boil it down, it's to experience life. Doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's the experience. And when you're planning it, you have to take into account of free will as well. Even though we kind of don't have that much free will on Earth, because we gave away our free will with our free will in order to come here in the first place. But you can still make choices. You can go left or you can go right. You can buy the
Right,
red
you have
car or the blue car.
influence over the outcome.
Yeah. So you're not just when you're in this room with all your soulmates, you can't just plan for one timeline. You have to actually plan for the hundreds of thousands of possible timelines that you might take. But all the important people, if you want to look at it as a hierarchical system, the important ones for you, this would be Joe, me, Brandon, Mike, Gerald, all of them. Those are big, big participants in your consciousness development, in your spiritual evolution. So almost all of those will come into your life in a different way, in different timelines.
So I agreed to a contract with my wife over 100 years ago of planning. And for her to put me through some hell and me the same way, we agreed to that?
Yeah.
Man, that's pretty bad.
That's what I was getting at when I said it. That's what I was getting at when I said it, dude. Like, ain't gonna front, but you know,
don't have the wisdom of retrospect. Think back to your very first girlfriend. They put you through hell too, but what did you learn from it? How did you change as a person? How did you grow?
Oh, wow. Well, that was a very short period of time. So
I was gonna say, I don't think she hurt me. I'm just saying she gone.
Oh man, that's so bad when you put it that way. We all signed up for this. Like, wow.
Yeah.
There's something wrong in my head, or my previous head when I signed up for everything. Wow, I must be a comedian.
There's a lot of things that they look bad as we're experiencing them. But I'll take this one back to almost everybody on the planet remembers 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
They remember where they were, what they were doing, whether they were eating, whether they were at work, driving, whatever. But if you take it back to the millions of people in the same room planning this lifetime, and somebody comes along and says, okay, we need some sort of gigantic trigger that raises the levels of compassion on the planet. What is the easiest, fastest, cleanest way to do that? You have 500 or 1,000, whatever, volunteers to die in that explosion, in that situation. But those 1,000 people had an effect on 8 billion people, or maybe like 7 billion people back then. They impacted every single person, even though it was a tiny, tiny fraction of an event.
Right. That's a good point that you bring up. And events like that are also synchronicity events to bring everybody like into the same focus and attention.
Yeah.
So once you have everything pointed inward at the same focal point, you know, there's a certain amount of connectivity alignment amongst the population that occurs. And it was actually felt pretty far and wide after that, I would have to say.
Mm-hmm.
It was felt far and wide.
In scientific circles, because it changed the Schumann resonance. Every year before that, the Schumann resonance was pretty solid at 7.83 hertz. But after that, we started, this is when, as a planet, started to go into that photon belt. So there's higher charge potential. So we're going through that now as a planet, like flying through space. But with that, we have to be able to hold more light, hold that photonic energy, which is also reflected in the Schumann resonance, which is why at the minute it's bouncing up all over the place. I mean, it's gone up to 400 or 500 hertz.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a stretch here, and it's okay if it's not. All right, but the timeline jumping, the synchronicity events, and all that sort of stuff. How does that tie back into the organites?
It kind of doesn't.
That's fair. No, because we were talking about the metaphysical aspect of it, but I just wanted to see if there was a connection maybe I was missing.
It's the alignment thing, and it's a little bit of the timeline thing, because it's how your reality is reflected in your alignment. And if you're out of alignment, or if you're moving from a place of being in alignment to being out of alignment, your physical reality can change dramatically, and vice versa. If you're too high, you end up going too low going too high. It's the same thing.
Right.
Your actual reality changes to reflect that disharmony in your energetic system.
Right. The fluctuations are the most disruptive to the system, is what, like, you could exist in a perpetual state of terrible low resonance, and live in misery with little complication other than being miserable. But it's like the differential between highs and lows and going up and down that will jar a system and basically shake it apart. Like when you're talking about your energy centers, because
So that's the purpose of the orgonite, is to bring the soul into alignment. And what that means at the DNA level is, okay, so you have like 80,000 cells, is it? Or 80 trillion cells or something in the body?
I was going to say that the first number sounded a little light. The second number may be a little bit. I have no idea what it is, but that first one wasn't it.
Anyway. So every Planck second, all those trillions of cells are making a decision towards expansion or contraction. The ideal lifetime planning, or life, or sort of evolutionary terms and spiritual evolutionary terms, is to achieve the highest percentage difference between misalignment and alignment. So it's to reach your highest potential.
Okay.
Right. So the more times all of your cells choose expansion is going to be the fastest way to get to wherever you want to go. You follow?
Yes.
You see how that ties into the orgonite now? It's about trying to maximize the amount of correct decisions you're making in life, both at the energetic level and the physical level.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep, seems to be the part that everybody has a problem with.
In what sense? Making the right decisions?
Because it's much easier to know what the right thing to do is sometimes than to actually carry it out. That's why.
Well, it's very easy here to get lost and find bad habits that help you get through the pain, but don't actually help you evolve past the pain. I mean, it's so easy here. There's drugs in every fucking corner, for fuck's sake.
Yep,
no, I understand that. Yeah.
And if you didn't get them at the corner, the doctor probably gave them to you, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah. So that's a whole realignment when you get out of that, by the way. That's you do something like that, you got to realign everything. And then you really changing how your mindset works and where you are.
Yeah. It makes a big difference.
And that's what I've had to say along the lines of people who use psychedelics in order to open up these these pathways for themselves and stuff too. Because I mean, I'm not there to judge, and I guess there's no shame, but at the end of the day, tends to be one of those things where if you didn't go through the exact process of undergoing it to then have it sort of given and revealed to you because that was your stage of development, then then the level of appreciation for it just simply isn't there to fully embrace it. People will do psychedelics sometimes, and I've seen them say, like, oh, it's changed my life. I've never really felt the same after that. I've always looked at things differently, and positive experiences and stuff. And that's great for some people. But I think that there's the other handful of people that really exploit it, don't get what they need out of it. And some of those people, like, they either turn to other stuff or they use it in the wrong ways, which is sad. And I've seen it happen to a couple of friends of mine.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the wrong ways, but I know what you mean. It's the wrong way to us. But even if they're on what we might call a more negative path, the likes of the 9/11, those people still had to die. The likes of the vaccine, those people still have to die. In order for us to recognize the danger of the vaccine, there has to be people dying from it. And it might look like the wrong decision from our perspective, from a desire to reach spiritual evolution. But that is part of the process.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the unfortunate events thing is just part of the existence. That's part of the being here. But it's when it's done with malice is when it becomes difficult. But then again, and I'm not trying to say that any of it's okay, but like sometimes these things have to happen for the greater good of it all. And I think that's
I definitely don't like it myself. It's horrible. It's disgusting. It's sickening what has been done, but it has to be done for people to wake up, for people to see it, for people to regret taking it.
So let me ask you something just a little bit more back on track. So if somebody were to make themselves an orgonite or buy one, either from you or just somebody reputable, right? What's the best way for them to start using their orgonite? What are some of the different uses that they could have in it aside from what you've already discussed, like as far as like spiritual awakening or using it for its energy, using its chi? Like, what are some of the different processes people undergo using the orgonites?
Okay, I'll bring that back to alignment just a little bit first. The main goal to start with is to clean up the chakra system. If you can focus on clearing the chakra system, keeping them healthy, keeping them centered, keeping them spinning at a decent sort of revolution, your outer reality is going to reflect that. So that's what you want to do first. You want to focus on the physical, getting the body sort of back to normal, back to a sort of harmonious state. That, in physical terms, that will reflect back as you simply make better decisions. Instead of a Twinkie, you'll choose an apple. And you won't, in some cases, you won't even know you're doing it. But if you change the inside, the outside has an effect. If you change the outside, the inside has an effect. The orgonite is the inside way of doing it that shows a reflection.
Right. So when your chakras are balanced with the orgonite, then your mindset and your desires ultimately change, whether consciously or subconsciously, just because the balance is having an overall effect on the system.
Yeah.
So the needs of the system are different. And like you said about the body takes what it needs, right? The body knows what it needs. So when it's reporting to self what you need, it's sending a different report than it historically has because it's now balanced.
Yes.
I need some balance, man.
This is where I have to step into the 12 elements of life.
Okay.
Okay, so the most important thing you can physically arrange in your environment is your environment itself. No matter where you are in life, it's always there. It's in your clothes. It's your choice of living space, your house, whether it's in the city, the country, your friends, your workspace, your hobby spaces. that is the most important thing to try and fix from the outside perspective, but also from the inside. So as reference to the orgonite, you want to create a sacred space if you can, even if it's a small one. So
Very cool, but I agree.
Hold on. It doesn't take over your environment you're in. You need to create a whole new one?
The pyramids are really good for cleaning the environment, but on a general level, whether you have a pyramid or a charger, like a sort of puck coaster kind of size and style, they work better in the chakras. But the more you can correct the environment that they're in, the more you will get out of it. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Okay, imagine trying to go to the middle of a rave and meditate.
No.
You're not going to get very far. So
No, I'm just thinking about it like this garage is my Zen place, man. This is where I go to, you know what I mean, chill
the
out.
man cave, right?
Yeah.
For men, it's usually the man cave.
My office, the same deal. You know, like I sit here at work, but then I voluntarily come back in front of the camera and enjoy it. You know, so there's certain spaces you got to set up for yourself that are cool like that.
Yeah. So that's what I would say is the first thing before you even think about what to do with the orgonite, is put it and yourself in the right environment first.
Okay.
Because that's going to dramatically affect how effective the orgonite can be. So the next sort of important factors, I'll go through the 12 elements first, all of them, just so you know what they are. So you've got environment, emotional health, physical health, like physical body, sexual fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, the level of creativity, your work and your mission, sort of like your purpose, rest and relaxation, your money and finances, which is separate to work, your tribe, nutrition, and your mental health. So if we bring it back to the chakras and the orgonite, they can most quickly affect your mental health, your spiritual fulfillment, your emotional health, and your physical body. So if you look at it in those terms, if you have something physically wrong with you, you can either look at it from the energetic perspective and try and heal the chakra, or you can put the orgonite on the affected area and work on it from the outside physical perspective. So you've got two choices there.
Okay.
So let's say the one I had you do earlier, standing over the orgonite, so that the path that it travels through you is from the spine to the crown. It goes all the way up in a straight line, and it'll work to bring that line into balance. All right, so that's one way. And it's a very good way of doing Qigong or Tai Chi or similar practices, is just to stand right on top of it and do those.
Okay.
And it's the same thing with meditation, whether it's a pyramid or a charger. If you're sitting directly on top of it, the energy will go straight up the vagus nerve, which also helps balance the breathing cycle. And there's a pulse when the heartbeat and the breathing cycle are in a certain rhythm. The spinal cord, the vagus nerve, will actually resonate the Schumann resonance, which also then travels up to the brain, which you might have guessed opens up the pineal gland, which is the bridge to higher levels of consciousness, and it opens up the crown chakra. So you're getting all of that thrown into one, like just from one exercise. Trying to get the vagus nerve, the breathing, and the heartbeat into the same cycle and getting the chakras aligned. That's a very good way of generally trying to balance your life. So
Okay.
there's also the topical, so put it on it. And then, like I showed you earlier, Nathan, with the meridians on the finger,
Mhm.
you can put the orgonite on top of a meridian point and put the scalar energy will travel through the photon channels to where it needs to go, which will in turn go back to the chakras and balance things that way. Then there's more simple practical things like everyday things, like charging your water. That's primarily what the coaster was designed for, is portability, and like being able to clean out your tea. It removes the pollutants, it improves the taste, and you can program that to do certain different things depending on what you want. Like
Okay.
you don't need an orgonite to do that. You can just write the words on a glass, and then the energy of those words gets imprinted into the water. Same thing. The orgonite is just a lazy way of doing it, and it's similar to Tai Chi and Qigong. You're getting the same energy out of Qigong that you will from an orgonite, but the orgonite is the lazy way of doing it. And whilst you're sitting on top of an orgonite, you can be doing other things. And because everybody's so busy at the minute, we need lazy tools. Or I need lazy tools, definitely. I don't know about you guys.
Oh no, I need lazy tools, bro.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Then there's more, I would call them low-key emergency situations, where one client had a child, and it was a young child, I think 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5, and she was in forest school and drank dirty muddy water, and started feeling sick. And she wasn't trying to do this specifically, but she had a larger orgonite that was about 6 or 7 inches across, and just by bringing the orgonite into her field, it made her vomit. So all this dirty water was removed just by going near the orgonite.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like it might have been a dire emergency if it was left in the digestive system, but it wouldn't let it get that far.
Gotcha.
Right.
The body needed to throw up, so it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, that's probably the body triggering the immune response, because the immune system realizes it really shouldn't have done that.
Gotcha.
So let's see, what else is there?
Right. So by putting everything in balance, but if it has an external thing that's in imbalance, it's kind of rejecting that, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
At that point. It's saying, okay, no, this is no longer compatible because we're bringing this vibration up, so that's got to go.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of looking at it, I think.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, can be. One of the others, one of my favorite ways, I don't like to meditate in an upright position. I know some people do. I just prefer lying down. So what I do, if I want to get a really good meditation and clear the chakras out at the same time, I put the orgonite pucks, the smaller ones, just on top of the chakra points. And when I do that, it doesn't take me long before I can feel like trucks and cars driving past, like they're driving over me. So I don't like to do that too much where I'm living, but if I'm going out into the park or something, that's a really good way of expanding your field and reconnecting to Earth. It's just
Okay. So does the orgonite have to be like on top of you, or can it be under you?
It can probably be under. I put them on top just because I don't want to lie on them. You can probably like dig a couple of holes in the ground so that they're not like too bumpy on you.
I guess what I'm asking is, like, if we made a floor tile, you know what I mean, like 2 foot by 2 foot of an orgonite built, and we inset it in the ground, Would it work the same?
You could do, yeah. But you don't need something that big.
Okay.
The pucks, they have a small focal range, but the chakras, the center of the chakras are quite small. So they don't have to be large organites to put that energy into one spot. It's like a tight beam. It's not dispersing the energy.
Okay.
Right. Like it's tight enough to run up and down your spinal column.
Yeah.
And through all your neural pathways.
Mm-hmm.
Tight.
Got it.
So, and just general meditation or sleeping. I recommend people 2 different ways for sleeping. If you're tired and fatigued, you put it at the base of your feet so that the energy comes up from the earth to your feet and it follows the same pathway through your body to the crown chakra. Or if you want to get into deeper sleep, or if you're practicing lucid dreaming or something like that, you put it on your head or under your head or beside your head on the pillow. I don't actually recommend people put them under a pillow because most pillows are synthetic and it kind of gets in the way of the energies. So if you've got cotton pillows, it's not going to be a problem. But if it's
everything you're telling me gives me so many ideas for products that would be useful. I'm just saying, like, all sorts of different uses.
There's a lot of ways you can use it. There's a lot of places you could place it. It's versatile stuff.
It's interesting.
Really is.
There's food. So for a couple of years there, I didn't have a fridge. I was just using Orgonites to store food, even in the summer. And when food is starting to go off, it gives a signal to the nature around it that this is now ready for recycling. Right? That's when you have the flies come in and fungus come in and bacteria and all that stuff. The idea in the cycle of life is to get rid of the waste and put it back into the life cycle. So Orgonite creates an energy beam where that signal isn't there. So
right, because it's life force energy.
Yeah.
So the life force energy, if it's in a field of life force energy, then how would that non-life force be dispersed?
What it does, it tends to dehydrate things. So it's like a dehydrator. I mean, you might get a little bit of mold on there sometimes, but it'll take 10 or 15 times longer to actually mold up on top of an Orgonite than it would just be left if it was
so
ignored.
Let me just get this right. So is it like those little cone things that they put over like an orange or something? And they show in time sitting next to an orange by itself on the table, it would stay longer? Is that kind of what we're looking at?
I've never seen that.
Never seen a triangle being created or a pyramid being created or anything like that that's hollow inside?
Yeah, I've seen the copper pyramids people put food into.
Okay.
That's the same principle because the center of the pyramid is going to be where that black hole of scalar energy is opening up. So, yeah, that would work as well.
Just trying to relate to something I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that too, right.
Yeah, the Orgonite is just a different way of doing it.
Okay.
I actually keep one in the fridge now too. So even when stuff's in there, it still lasts longer.
Let me make a wild hypothetical here. It is this absolutely outlandish and super unnecessary. All right, but let's just say that you took one of those bifilar S coils, like you had said. Let's say you made a large one, right? And you layered it with some stuff and you put it underneath your bed. And then on top of your bed, you put a pyramid, like a copper pyramid, let's just say, for purposes of the conversation. Like, you sleep in your bed every single night. Like, what degree of effect would you say that something like that would have on you? Would that keep you in a constant state of balance and neutrality? Would what would you suppose at that scale?
Well,
Something
I can tell you
large.
for a fact that you get really fucking trippy dreams, because I've done that.
Okay.
I've had the Orgonites all under me, and I've got a couple of different pyramids. I've got a 7-foot Cheops pyramid that I've stepped in a futon in, and that is that's the kind of stuff you want to reserve for traveling to different planets or remembering past lives. That's a really fast way of doing it.
Really?
Makes me want to just try that, though.
Yeah.
It makes me want to just try that.
Past life. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought about all the good stuff. We forgot all the bad stuff you just said. You notice how that worked?
The thing is, with past lives, most of it, well, everybody's died. And there's a natural blocking process where you don't actually feel your death as a soul. That part is kind of removed, because otherwise everything would be carrying trauma every single time it incarnated.
Okay.
But there are certain life experiences that carry trauma and aren't blocked. And the unfortunate thing about living in this universe, there's been a lot of war. And the Orion Wars started about 500,000 years ago, and they're still going on. That's in the Orion constellation, the Lyran constellation, and a few others. And it's still going on. So you're going to have a lot of past lives where you were fighting and dying. And I remember quite a few of mine. And they're not pretty. So
were you like a human incarnation?
in most of them, yes. In a couple, I was definitely not human, but humanoid. Though I don't know what I was. But I've seen all kinds of spaceships and death rays, and like, imagine living in Star Wars. It's pretty much like that. It's a pretty nasty place out there, depending when you're talking about.
So would you say that Earth is actually more of a sanctuary than we maybe give it credit for?
No. Earth is one of the worst planets you will ever get to. It is. See, most life, when it incarnates on a planet, it starts in the 5th dimension. So as you're born, you're starting in a neutral place. Earth was designed as sort of a playground. So you can experience very low vibrational realities and very high vibrational realities. So if you compare that to the extremities of emotional response, you can have somebody in a gang war kind of area say to their grandmother on the way out the door that they love them and they'll see them later or whatever. And then they can go out and shoot somebody. And the range of emotions there, it's going from pure love to pure hate.
Wow.
In most planets, you couldn't actually do that. They're too far apart in vibrational terms. So Earth is one of those places, if you want to experience the nasty sides of life, this is one of the places you can do it. And for some people, it can be quite addictive. There are souls that get lost here and stuck here because it's kind of like a roller coaster.
I think those people.
But if you have a lot of boxes to check off on your soul list before you could reach a next level of evolution, so to speak, this is probably a good place to do it because you could get it all done in one spot.
That is one of the benefits of it. You can experience so much crap to end up going so much higher than anywhere else. It's like 100 times faster as an evolutionary step than a more paradise planet would be. Because you don't grow much when everything's perfect.
Lack of experience, yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of the reasons that Atlantis lasted so long was because around that time period, in linear terms, your choices of evolution in most cases were coming out of war states because of the Orion Wars. And Atlantis, for the most part, the first like 2/3 of its lifespan, it was basically paradise. You know, they had technology, they had perfect health, they had a really nice, easy living. And I think that was so successful because there was so much trauma everywhere else. People just wanted a rest after it. And it was a nice long rest because it had nice long lifespans.
I don't understand something about it though. If they were so advanced, why are they not up front in the head of this world now? I mean, even if everything got destroyed, they'd have this intelligence to rebuild it all.
Well, it was I can't remember his name. I'm always going to call him the Mad King. But it was the third person who took over the ruling of Atlantis. He was a little bit crazy in the head.
Mm.
So he, in our terms, call him a narcissist. He had all this power, and he was trying to rule over everything, taking it away from everybody else. So you had a split in society where he was trying to take away the power of the people who made it what it was to begin with.
Sounds like a familiar equation.
Yeah, it's absolute power corrupts absolutely, and even back then it did. But it was a slower evolution. Like it might have took like a couple of thousand years, but at a certain point, he just became unstoppable. Everybody against him was just killed and removed. So
when his civilization got whatever it did by the planet and taken out, they didn't want to rebuild here?
Well, that was when the flood wasn't their own doing. The flood came from an external circumstances that they didn't have control of, whether you were the good guys or the bad guys. So whoever was left, they're the ones that went to all the different cultures in the world. They taught agriculture, they taught painting, they taught languages, they taught numbers to all these primitive tribes.
But they didn't reunite to create another civilization on the surface of this planet.
Well, most of the surface was flooded. There wasn't much left.
Well, you had said previously that there was an inherent incompatibility between the Atlanteans and the tribes, right? So if a lot of the Atlanteans were wiped out and a lot of the tribal members were kind of left, then like the hedging your bets part of it, I suppose, would be to try and teach the tribes what they needed to know to get to a certain point of evolution themselves, where, you know, it could become, you know, feasible again.
It's just the right thing to do. I mean, you don't really have much else of a choice. You have all this knowledge. You don't want to see people going around killing each other and killing tribes just for food or women or whatever. You want to try and teach them how to look after themselves, to make them stronger. It's just who you are.
I don't know. I just have a different idea about it. It was. I understand that aspect of it. Go teach them what you can to help them get to a higher level of existence. But there's also another side where I'd want to rebuild everything that I had if it was a paradise.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's why a lot of them probably did go underground. I mean, do you know Derinkuyu in Turkey?
Yeah, that was the underground entire city that they found, right? And they don't even know the full expanse of it yet. But the one guy found it when he was renovating his basement.
Yeah,
but it was a tale before then. Like nobody even believed it existed.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first starting points of them trying to keep that sort of paradise life going by going underground in certain spaces.
Okay.
So the architecture in some of them is just magnificent. You know, it's just like the Indian temples and the churches. You know, it's built with amazing precision and detail, and you're finding sacred geometry and somatic sort of symbols and all this all over it.
Not to mention each one of those chambers is a resonance chamber.
Yeah. And they knew how to move air. They knew how to move water over huge distances.
They knew how to move water up, which is crazy.
Yeah, there's a fantastic example of that in Greece, I think it is, where they were able to lift water up. It's like only a couple of meters, but the entire plaza was so fluid with water that even under the blazing heat, the entire place was cool all the time because there was water everywhere. And primitive tribes couldn't have done that without help.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I mean, the place in Turkey that you were talking about, my understanding was that it's as large as a modern city underground, and that they haven't even, that there's still tunnels out that connect to other bits that could be miles and miles away, and it just expands out again.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff. But do you want to bring it back to Orgonite? Or do you want to take more dives in the Atlantis? Because Liz is going to be able to speak with a lot more authority on a lot of that stuff than I can. So
let's talk about Orgonite. So I mean, what are some alternative forms of Orgonite that maybe it's something that you've done in the past, or something that we could all try at home? I mean, you've kind of went over the basic composition of it, but why don't you bring us step by step through making an Orgonite that's going to function in the best possible way?
Okay. Make your bifilar coil, put it at the bottom of a jam jar, put wire wool in there and cotton wool, and layer it up as much as you can. When you're close to the top, put a quartz crystal in the middle, and there you go. There's your functional Orgonite.
And how many layers would you say?
As many as possible.
And if you're using resin,
you don't need it.
No. So just layering is enough. Layering and dampening down.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will work. It's not going to be as strong, but if you put one of those in the fridge and you put one in your herb cupboard or wherever you've got fresh food, it's going to make it last longer. You're going to feel better with that around you if it's in front of your computer. But it's going to work better if you also put shungite in there to help with those EMFs. And it's going to work better for compassion if you put quartz crystals in there, rose quartz or Amazonite or whatever you want. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to have the generator. It has to have the layers, and you probably should program it to the way you want.
How do you program it?
Yeah, so tell us about that.
That's where the crystals come in.
Okay.
But you don't have to use crystals. You can use words. You can just write on paper love, compassion, money, finances, freedom, abundance, stuff like that. And those words will carry the energies. So you just put them in between the layers. One of the important things, though, is you want the quartz on top, because that's the governor that the immune system works with in most cases. That's what controls what the frequency output is going to be. It's all going into the quartz, and then it's coming out of the quartz after you communicate with it.
So that ends up similar to Sean's presentation earlier today, like where you actually saw the energy entering into the crystal, and then yeah,
it really is that simple.
Interesting. Now, tell us about orgonite and how it could be used with plants. How you could use it in practical application, and what you could kind of expect to get out of that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, with plants, you're going to get an average 3 to 4 times accelerated growth rates.
Really?
You're going to get healthier seeds. You're going to get more vibrant seeds, and you're going to get better flavored seeds. But what you don't want to do is put them on top. For plants, you want to put the orgonite beside it, on top of the soil. You don't actually want them in the soil, because that will actually keep them clean. One of the ways to charge an orgonite is to bury it in earth overnight. It's kind of like a reset point. So you don't want to put the organites under the soil if you're growing things. You want it beside, so that the fields are still active from the earth and they're working on top of the earth.
Okay.
That's the only rule I can think of when it comes to plant growth.
Okay, so like if you just had, let's say you're not planting outside, let's say you have a potted plant inside, it's not the best practice to just take an orgonite and put it underneath it, like underneath the pot or something like that.
You want the orgonite on top of the soil beside the stem.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
you can couple that with electroculture as well.
So let me ask you, they have these little things that are they go like this, and like a little vortex, and they have the post that goes down in there, and they put the crystal in the center. That's not the same thing at all, is it?
Well, I'm not sure they're using crystals in electroculture. The last time I was looking it up, it's just wires.
Okay.
And it's the wires capturing the energy from the atmosphere and bringing it to where the trees or plants can grab a hold of it.
Okay.
Now, I have seen what Nathan's saying before, too, where it's the same thing, but with a crystal.
Well, I've never seen that or tested that.
Okay.
It might just be somebody's way of trying to make it fancy or make it viral or something. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of the same components, so to speak, in it when you have soil and the organic of the soil, and then you have the coil, you have an inorganic being like the copper going into the ground, and then you have the crystal, being quartz, and then you have the crystal under pressure. So a lot of the same concepts are there.
I don't think it's necessary.
That's fair.
The trees, they're more intelligent than we are in spiritual terms. They don't need a crystal to help them know what to do. They already know what to do. It's part of their sort of genetic memory. They just need extra energy.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you think about nature in general. Like, nature doesn't make mistakes like human beings do. Like, there's things that as a human you could look at from a human perspective and say, well, that's brutal. Did you see that animal, did you see the crocodile bite the face off of the zebra, as it was crossing the river? But for that crocodile, I mean, he was just trying to eat. So that's not a wrongdoing as far as that programming is concerned. Trees, they grow, and if there's something in their way, they grow around it, and all these things that they do, and they don't do wrong. if the tree falls and it falls on the zebra that got its face bit off, I mean, that's just an unfortunate event. It's not a wrongdoing, right? It's the whole cycle of it. Human beings are the only things that are like, well, I know I got to do this, but you know what? I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
That's it.
Trees always find a way. They're smart like that. But when it comes to animals, there is no perspective on that. It's just neutral in nature. It just happens. It just is.
Yeah.
The bodies left over, the bones left over, they're part of the cycle that feed the insects. And sometimes the insects hurt the trees. Sometimes they're beneficial to trees. It's got its own system. Like you said, when humans get in the way, it just interferes with things.
Yeah, right. Because they're in an equilibrium of some kind of symbiosis. It's in a constant state of correction. So anytime something's overdone, there's a negative effect usually to beat that back and knock that out and kind of regain the equilibrium. I mean, humans tend to be overpowered. They're a little OP. So, what do we end up doing is just whatever we want. And when the damage comes, we don't stop. Something comes and tries to, work us out, but then we overcome that. So until it's too late, and then it really, screws us. And by then we won't have anything to worry about.
I always watch that when I go walking at the park. I look for the ant trails and try to avoid every single one of them. And the way I see it, there's probably, like 30 of them in the general area going around one bin. And the way I look at it is there's probably a 30-foot area underground that there's a huge ant mound or something. You know what I mean? So I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to mess with where they're going. And you know what I mean? I don't want them on me. So I avoid them at all costs.
The crazy thing is it's everywhere. That's every inch of dirt you walk on. There's probably something under there doing the same thing.
Yeah. But ants do actually have memory. They will, if you kill an ant mound or try to, they'll remember it. And whoever's left over, they will carry all the dead bodies and leave them at your door.
Really?
That's a pretty freaky level of intelligence.
Yeah. That's creepy.
They're definitely one of those things you want to avoid. Like you want to avoid purposefully harming.
Yeah.
If you accidentally kill something on your way through the park, it's just part of their life cycle. But if you go out of your way to harm them, they're going to feel the difference in the intention. And trees and plants can do that as well. But they're energetically aware of those things. Because our fields, we might be stupid, but energetically, our fields are actually quite powerful. They imprint a lot of different things around us. So you don't want to harm them.
That ties right back into what we were saying before about the planet, right? You have these highs and your lows. Being a human being on the planet, we have some of the biggest fields of them all as far as our own auras are concerned. The biggest, and like most other, even like animals and so on, they have very limited auras.
Yeah.
They're not sold realistically.
The human field can stretch out 18 miles.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Have you heard of that female Native American tracker? Scatchewea, was it, or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, she's on $1 coin.
Yeah. You've heard stories of people like her being able to track people that walked over a path 20 years ago. Do you know how they did it? They're following the field.
Like footprints that leave energy?
No, the energetic field. Do you remember have you both seen the film Donnie Darko?
Long time ago, but yeah.
Do you remember that scene when he's sitting on the sofa and he watches this gray sort of metallic orb fall sort of out of his chest and lead out of the room, and he gets up and he starts following it, and it goes to the fridge, and then a few seconds later his body reaches the fridge? Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
That is one of the few representations of this field. So whenever you walk somewhere, you're creating a quantum connection between where you are and where you're going to be. It's like an etheric thread. And that's left there for a long time.
So it's crazy you say that, because you remember when we were talking the other day about, I told you about a sleep paralysis event that I had, where like all I was trying to do was get out of bed and go to the bathroom and grab something to drink out of the fridge. And I did that like 6 or 7 times, only to get back to my bed and realize I was in it each and every time, to absolute frustration, and then I'd get back in and then I'd do it again and right back to the same, until I felt the cold of the floor. And I was like, I felt the floor all the other times, but it didn't feel cold. And that's when I realized that I was actually awake. But what was wild about it is it was the exact same thing that it was all the other times, except for that one thing. Because each and every time I opened up the fridge and got a drink out and took a drink and went back to bed. And it was exactly what it was. Yep.
Only one of them was real and the rest weren't.
Wow.
Is that what you mean, yeah?
What's that?
Only one event was real and the rest were like your astral body or something.
Exactly, right. It was just me like doing it, but like I was having, it was an OBE. That's what it was. So, but it was obviously following the path of something that I was destined to do.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, it was just lagging behind.
Kind of funny how that works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I have stories, man. This is the lifelong ordeal with me. It's crazy. Even before I was super in tune with all these things, there were certain events that had happened to me that were just crazy. My dad got sick when I was like 21, and I had this dream that was so real that like I woke up and I was like, oh wait, it was just a dream. But like you wake up and you have like an inherent feeling of like knowing and truth, like of anything, right? Like, yes, I have a dog, right? Or something that's just so real and that it's true. I woke up and even though it was like a dream, I woke up thinking it happened already. So I was very confused. But what the dream was my dad was sick, and I got this phone call that he was sick. He was sick, and he was in the hospital, and he's dead. And they're screaming in the background saying he's dead and all this stuff, right? And 3 weeks later, my dad went to the hospital, and then I got that exact phone call.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was like, wiped. But when, before like even that happened, like I said, I woke up thinking this was true and trying to know whether he was okay or not and where he was. And I went and checked on him in his room, and he was laying down in bed because it hadn't occurred yet.
Yeah. Big events like that tend to be more easily precogged and more powerfully precogged. In my experience, anyway.
Yeah. Crazy stuff with that, it's and that was like one of the first times that I realized like that was so powerful and so unexplainable and so like that it was undeniable, Like that's exactly what happened, and it played itself out exactly as it went. And I was just like, wow, okay. It made me look at life a whole lot differently, because once you realize that something like that is in play in reality, you're just like, wow, okay, I need to pay closer attention to things.
Wow. That's intense, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people get that kind of thing as warnings as well. Like, don't go to the work today, or don't go to the market, or don't drive this road. And then they find out later that there was a car crash or something. That can be quite mind-altering as well, like on a bigger scale.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, like, it's one of those things that it's like, had I understood it for what it was, and just like, and you can't fault yourself for it, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, I mean, had that led to taking some kind of action or something, could it have been an avoidable circumstance? The answer to that is pretty much yeah. But you can't fault yourself for not picking up on something like that either. So that's not a burden I've carried, but it's something that certainly happened.
Yeah. Okay, one thing I want to get back to is that thread idea.
Okay.
So this isn't really a way to use the orgonite, it's just more of a fun way to play with it. So what a lot of people would do is put glasses of water on top of an orgonite, and you'll usually see some kind of beam and a sort of clear bubble appearing in the water when it's frozen. So they put this in the fridge or the freezer. But what most people don't actually do is slow the process down, so it takes hours and hours. But if you think of it in terms of memory, the water that you're freezing has been through possibly hundreds of miles of pipes and hundreds of people before it met somebody who actually had the tools to clear the energy of it. So when you freeze water, what actually happens with the orgonite, it starts removing those threads. Now, if you leave it on there long enough, you'll see the whole thing turn crystal clear and all those threads are gone. That's the process of removing, you could call it the traumatic entanglements that are those etheric threads of experience. And this.
So are you talking about like white blisters and an ice cube sort of deal?
Yeah. If you get it, you'll see a lot of them. It kind of looks like icicles. It's just hundreds of icicles around this central blob. Does that make sense?
So you're saying that it would freeze as clear if you use an orgonite and slow it down, or if you expose it to orgonite and then for an extended period, then put it in a freezer with the orgonite?
Yeah, I actually think I sent a video or an image of that to Nathan last week as well. If you can open that folder, you'll see it.
Okay, give me 1 second. I remember seeing something like that.
I think it was a three-way split image.
Yep, I got it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, there you go. So you can see the beam of energy coming out of the orgonite more strongly in the middle one, with all the threads around it. And then on the right there, you'll see crystal clear bubble with almost no threads left.
Okay. Yeah, it does look like icicles.
Okay, so you're talking about the horizontal
Yes.
Okay, coming off of the center clear mass.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what they are, if you look at it in terms of the human field, and this is where Orgonite can help you as well, in the process of cord cutting, everything in your environment that you've ever touched is probably still connected to you. And for a lot of things, it doesn't make sense to still be connected to you. Like the pen you lost when you were 6 in like primary school, or your backpack, or your trainers, or your tricycle, or whatever. You don't need those physical connections anymore. So the Orgonite, as part of balancing your system, it's removing all those tangled threads that don't need to be there anymore.
Oh,
I wish I would have known that years ago. Want to hear another crazy story?
okay. Hopefully not as depressing.
No, but all right. This is a good one though. I'm shocked I haven't told this yet, but I feel like I thought about it and waited for the right moment.
Okay.
Right, but it was about 12 years ago. Okay. Used to, I told you I've restored straight razors and stuff like that for years, right? So we used to go to this antique fair, so to speak, like a flea market, outdoor flea market. It was every Sunday. And one time I went to this flea market and I found a safety razor, which generally I didn't really collect, but this one was particularly like nice. It was cheap. It was like a couple bucks, whatever.
Mhm.
So I picked up the safety razor. It was in the box that it came in, the whole 9 yards, right? And like I said, because I wasn't really into safety razors specifically, I didn't really do anything with it for a while. But one day I just got this random urge to like check it out and maybe clean it up, see what it was all about. So I went and I opened it up and I'm like, this thing doesn't need a restoration. This really just needs to be cleaned, and polished. That's it. So
Okay.
I went and I took it into the bathroom and I got out like, an old toothbrush and started just scrubbing away at it and stuff. And immediately I felt this ominous sort of presence. But I thought nothing of it, and I'm just cleaning the thing further. And then I felt like something passed behind me. Okay. And I just felt like somebody was in the room in a small bathroom. And I'm just like, it was so strong, the sensation, that I literally turned around thinking that I was going to see like, my wife or whatever behind me. There was nobody there. Well, I continued doing it. And then I felt something grab me and the door slammed right on me. And I looked and nobody was there. And I was like, holy crap. So I kind of dropped the thing. I'm a little freaked out at this point, not really understanding what just happened. And I didn't say a word. I walked downstairs and I walked into my living room. And my wife at the time says, "Can you close that door? It's freezing in here all of a sudden." And just as she said that, every hair on my entire body stood on end, and hers too. And I was like, the door isn't open. And I was just about to get the words out to tell her about the freaky crap that happened upstairs. Okay. And before I even got the words out, she said, "Joe, your nose is bleeding."
Really?
I was like, what? And I go and I wipe, and I don't get nosebleeds. So I wipe and my nose was bleeding. And here's where it gets extra super messed up. My son, who was only like maybe 18 months old or 2 years old at the time, something like that.
His
Okay.
nose went too?
His nose was bleeding too.
Yeah.
And that's when I told her what happened upstairs. And I was like, there's something to do with this razor. There's some kind of situation. So we did what we knew how to best do. And we called up her religious Jamaican friend. We said, "What do we do?" She told us to tell it to go back to God and this and that, tell it that you didn't mean it any harm and you didn't mean to disturb it. And I'm sitting there like, this is the craziest thing that I've ever, this is even crazier than the thing that happened with my dad and this happened after. I'm just like, whatever. So now the whole conversation shifts into, what do we do with this razor? And, my ex said, well, just get rid of it. I don't care what you do with it. Just get rid. I'm like, I don't think you understand. Whatever's going on with this razor, I just ticked it off real bad by cleaning it with the best intentions of like it being nice and appreciating it. I was like, getting rid of this thing and desecrating it is probably not the best idea. So the best thing that I could come up with was to put it into a plastic bag, bring it out to my garage, let it sit out in the garage until next Sunday when we would bring it back to where it friggin' came from. That was the best thing I could come up with. And that's exactly what we're about to do. Now, I don't know what table I got it from. It was a year before, whatever. Okay. But it was going back to where it came from. Long and short, I load my kid into the car. My other son wasn't even born yet. And we go to the same antique fair, park in the parking lot. Where the parking lot is, there's like a road divider. It's like, an I-beam like this, this wide. They're 18 inches wide or something,
Okay.
really wide. And I go and I take the razor in the bag and I put it dead in the middle of this thing. And then I go to get my son out of the car to put him into a stroller or whatever. And as I'm putting him into the stroller, I hear a sound and see something out of the corner of my eye. And I look and I'm about 8 feet away from where this guardrail was, and the razor bag is sitting right next to me. The thing flew off of this guardrail, and there was no wind, there was no cars passing, nothing. Just decided that it needed to be 8 feet away next to me. And that was just some strange stuff. All I could say is that the first table that we saw, I was like, whoop. And it was on the person's table, and later on they're going to be like, where the hell did this come from? I don't remember that, whatever. But it never bothered us ever again. So but yeah, it is crazy story, but like every word of it is true, and I wish I would have known that like Orgonite could remove an attachment, because that's seemingly exactly what this is. And I don't know what the attachment was, but evidently that that was special to somebody. There was some kind of energy from them still on it. I have no idea. I'm not even pretending to know. But
it sounds like it was attached to somebody who's died, hasn't moved on, and they're stuck in a cycle. So everything connected to them is going to carry that etheric thread, that quantum connection. So if you disturb that, their spiritual essence that's left over is going to react to it, and they're not going to like it. So it's kind of like poltergeisting, but at a distance through the object.
So was the spirit punching Joe in the nose?
No, I think that's something different, actually. And let me tell you a little bit of a story about me when I was a kid. And it seems to happen to a lot of other people in the autistic community and people who were born into spiritual stuff. So I used to get nosebleeds all the time. And I mean like 5, 6, 7 times a day, to the point where I didn't want them to, but I was taken to the doctor and had some kind of red hot poker jammed up the nose to block off the channels. But it was interesting you saying there, you and your son experienced that at the same time.
So yeah, exactly the same time.
And I think that's because of there's a channel through the nostrils that it's used in the pranayama schools of yoga a lot, where you focus on closing off different nostrils in order to trigger certain brain responses.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some kind of like connection there in a very physical way to possibly the pineal gland. I'm not actually sure, but that pathway seems to open when there are spiritual things happening.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's just my
I
theory.
mean, it does to me. I mean, well, it's really hard to say. Like, it's really hard to say. I think the energy just in the room obviously changed because there was like a discernible, physical response, to temperature, which we discussed previously, right? Isn't necessarily like a measurable drop in temperature in the room, but it's a sensation in your body where that's happening, right? So I mean, I kind of
mean ghost. It's just something spiritual or powerfully spiritual is happening. Yeah, it can still be pretty trippy though. It can still be scary.
Yeah,
but that nosebleed thing I've heard over and over again from hundreds of people, especially when they're young.
Yeah, well, I'm not autistic, so I mean, I don't know about that correlation for me at least. But as far as like this particular experience that happened, and it was kind of freaky because my nose bleeding just hasn't been a thing. Unless I go digging for gold too hard or something,
You never got them when you were a kid, though? When you were younger?
No.
What about you, Nathan? You ever get that?
What, pick for gold? or have the nosebleeds?
Nosebleeds.
Okay. I do get nosebleeds. And it's probably like once a week or so. Well, maybe not that much. Maybe it's a couple
Does
weeks.
that correlate to you playing with different fields with your testicles by chance?
Sometimes. Sometimes it's just out of the blue. Like it'll just start bleeding out of the blue. But yeah, sometimes if the energy isn't right in the room, then things just tend to happen.
Now that I think about it, when I had the rock situation going on, I had a couple nosebleeds then too.
It's funny how you only remember these things in retrospect, isn't it? Even if they're like 10, 20 years ago sometimes. It doesn't make sense until you have all the pieces.
Well, that's what putting it together is all about. I actually never really made the correlation between A and B until this moment, I wasn't, I like to believe that out of all the odd experiences that I have, that I keep it all in perspective and maintain like a human amount of sanity, so, with that said, like I try not to like fly completely off the rails and try to be like this weird ghost story situation and then this weird rock and, because like as much as it makes like some kind of logical sense, especially when we start to tie it into science, right? It still sounds like some batshit crazy stuff. So it's sort of like, meh. What are you gonna do? You chalk it up for what it's worth. Like there were 3 people there about, with the whole ghost story thing, and every word of that was wild and true. And, even the phone call thing, I think I confided in a friend or something being like, man, I just can't shake this dream, so it's not like it's unsubstantiated, but at the end of the day, man, it's like, there's certain things that, are high strangeness and defy, statistics of coincidence, because they're, like you said last time, man, there is no coincidence.
Academics like to dismiss it as anecdotal evidence, which is odd because most of their research requires the people talking about their experiences, which is exactly the same thing. It's anecdotal experiences. But they dismiss it at the individual level and don't put all the other 10 million anecdotal pieces of evidence together, because at that point, it's hard, strong data. It's not just this one thing. All this weird stuff is always happening all the time.
Yeah. Well, and if you make it taboo to talk about, or entertainment value only to talk about, you could only talk about it from a perspective of like, woo, this is fun, right? And you never give any sort of solid credence to it, then that's all it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
It's sort of what it boils down to. And I think that's been our frustration all along with we did that episode the other day where it was like kind of the rift between engineering and physics and the divergence of it. It boils down right to the same pot. It's like there's like all these taboo things that it's like no matter how many people experience it, no matter how many people, it's like it is never given any sort of validity. In fact, like if you have enough of those instances and they're consistent and they're disruptive to your life and you're not keeping these things in check and perspective, like you're probably medicated. If you talk about these things like they're matter of fact and they're influencing your life in like crazy ways, you're probably medicated. It's just what it is. Like, and to a degree, I feel sorry for those people. I'm sure some of them are just friggin' crazy, but there's probably a percentage of them, probably a fair percentage of them that maybe aren't crazy, but they don't also know how to handle whatever their interaction level is. Like, it's what it boils down to. They don't know how to handle that. They confuse this with that and unhealthy integration and all this crap.
So hold on. So you're living your life, but you're seeing your past life, but you're also seeing your future life, and you don't know which one you're in at any given time.
I don't think that's what he meant there, but yeah, that'd be true too.
No, it's not what I meant, but
strange.
I'm just maybe not me. Maybe like the people that I was talking about, like generally. Yeah, maybe like they have these overlapping experiences and then there's no differentiation, so they don't know where they're at, and so they're just crazy, right? That's what it boils down to. They don't know what their reality is, so it's just, or I should say their physical reality, right? That's the big difference, right? Is the physical reality.
So one of the places where this is especially strong was alien abductions. Ever since that president made the deal that allowed alien abductions, they started I think it was the CIA, started calling these things conspiracy theories because there were so many of them. And because it was back in those days, you really couldn't talk about this because it was very fringe. And it was in the media that this was completely insane and it was conspiracy theory and they'd be locking people up for it. There was a lot of fear put around that situation so that people wouldn't talk about it, even though it was happening to thousands of people all over the world. They put that out there to stop them talking. But there's always been that secrecy element to it, trying to hide things.
Well, the secrecy element of this is as old as time itself. I mean, I have a whole entire, bookshelf full of books that have to praise these things in, a very, allegorical and hypothetical type scenarios to be able to get the point across, right? Because if you were to say the quiet part out loud, all the things that we're saying, because it creates trouble.
Gotcha.
And it can ruin your life.
Yeah, but what's funny is that it's knowing the secret to life would ruin your life, right? That's what it boils down to.
No, I meant in terms of it can disrupt your family. You can be locked up for being schizophrenic just because you're telepathic. But that's going to affect your family, your work, friends, and everybody around you. And it's not just you that's suffering for that.
Yeah, but I mean, that boils right back down to what I was saying before. I mean, if there's people that have these intense cognitions and shit, like ability to sense these things, and they have no ability whatsoever to differentiate this from that, here from there, and all these different aspects of physical reality versus the rest, that's when it becomes problematic, you know?
Yeah.
That's when it becomes problematic, because you realistically, you can't sit there in a meditative state and have these profound experiences that are, you know, super life-changing and, you know, vivid and real, right? And they are real. And then bring that back to physical reality and then just pretend like that isn't full-blown play in your physical reality, because they're two separate things, you know? There's a level of knowledge that you're supposed to take away from these things, and then ways that you can integrate the things into your life in a healthy and meaningful way, without pretending like this is the absolute physical reality, because there's a rift there. They're not the same. You know, they can influence each other, but they're not the same. So if you have the inability to differentiate one from the other, then you're crazy. And that's the difference, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, what's up, everybody? Man, we got another episode after this. Goes into part 3 of this. Really cool stuff, man. I see everybody's having fun in the chat. Got in there a little bit myself today. Man, this is cool. I want to thank 8th Center for taking care of this for us and doing an interview with us. It was really awesome and eye-opening. So, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah. What's that? Can't have fun in old man's chat? Are you crazy? That's all I do. Oh, man. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. If you got the emoji, throw it up. Have fun, man. What it's all about. Oh, man. That's so cool. Yeah, we go into Atlantis tomorrow, guys. We got a whole episode on that. Like Joe was saying here, whole episode on that is going to be so awesome. I listened to it probably about 4 times already, and just goes into the woo right away. So that's cool. Yeah, we all enjoy it, 8th. You know what? I never understood it until now, and I still am learning, that's for sure. But at least I have a lot more understanding than I used to. Right on, man. Right on. I don't know what that's about. Oh, man. Today is a school day. Not for me, man. Those days are long gone. Getting there. That's for sure. My 2024 Mac Mini. Well, I had a Mac Mini. It only lasted a couple of years. I thought when you got that, you had Linux, and it was just set up forever, and I was wrong on the Mac. That sucked. So, yeah, Liz does make a lot of sense. She was a really good sport with Joe too. So, no, it was really fun, man. Really fun. Tell people about this. Okay, so it set me up with an orgonite. He showed me a picture, right? And he's giving me instructions. And we started, I believe it was up here, moved all the way down to your feet. And then I had to stand over this thing, right? And every time he started mentioning something was going on, my body responded to every single thing. You know, can you recall something? Did it happen? And then it would happen just like that. So, man, it was so interesting, the whole process of what was going on. And my mind started tripping, okay? And I won't lie about that. you kind of get into a different state of mind altogether when you're doing this stuff and you follow his instructions. So yeah, it kind of went to different things and who you see in there and where you go and the things it shows you. And then, man, that last one we were talking about where, like he said, it might have been in my throat, but it was right in my chest. It felt like somebody sat on me. So yeah, it was a cool experience, man. It was something different, something I hadn't experienced before. But afterward, I felt a lot better. I could tell you that. It was just, I don't know how to describe it completely. It was strange, cool, and something I would do again, absolutely for sure. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, I was reading the comments again. Oh, man. Man, there's something wrong with my internet. I so got to fix it. I am not happy with this. I'm going to turn off all the kids' computers, what I'll do. Stop using all my internet. Huh. Blockage. Yeah, probably. I don't know exactly what, though we have identified one possible thing. So, I mean, that could be it. And I kind of just want to wait to see what the answer was to that before I say a whole lot about it. Yeah, I don't know that it's magic, but it's definitely just a different understanding. Oh man, sorry, I got so much going on right now, reading everything. Oh man, yeah, but that was a cool episode, man. We really kind of just jumped off the deep end. And first episode, we learned, what is it, how is it built, the reason why it's there. Now we went into a little bit more of the understanding of it, and the next episode kind of not brings us to the end, but it brings us further. It brings us further into understanding what was going on here in these processes. So very entertaining and informative. Yes, it was. So printing images. I saw a guy do that with his Tesla coil about pictures, and I wasn't convinced about that. But Orgonite's different. It actually has a physical aspect to it when you're in the room with it. So that I got a lot more. Yeah, guys, it was a really cool episode, man. Let's see. Can draw a functional orgonite. Interesting. Well, you said the words, and when you wrote them down, it had meaning to it, and the meaning brought energy to it, from what I understand. Man, Jarvis has a fascination with bees. I can tell you that. I don't know what that was about, Joe, but we'll let you figure that out. Yeah, I could tell you this. We definitely are creating awareness around this. That's for sure. Yeah. Inside joke there, huh? Oh, it's funny. Yeah, it's so cool. Man, I love this chat. You guys always have so much fun with us. Fascinates with B2 hives. Dude, I got bees outside my house all the time. They're always out there. Interesting. All right. Jarvis and his bees again. Bees and holes. There you go. Buzzing around the hole. Oh. Yeah. Well, I think most people just have to go into it with an open mind, and that's really what it's going to take. Open mind, see what's going on. Don't get ahead of yourself in it, though. Just take it just like he tells you to. Grebennikov, I actually have a video coming out about Grebennikov very soon, and it talks about the resonance and frequency stuff. It was a PDF that I'm putting into a AI voice thing. So, yeah. Key with bees. Just like wings move too fast, frequency creates a disturbance in the gravity. Interesting. Yeah, Joe, we're not going to go into that. I'm going to avoid that question. Joe had his fun the other time we were on live. Talk about that. Leave that one alone. Oh, man. But if you remember, you can watch it on the channel. Get all the... I won't say it again. Yeah, you're late. Good to have you, though. Don't be a pee hole. Oh, man. Yeah, it's a funny one, man. Well, it depends which one you're talking about. Your Pentahoff one was just cool. The other one, the Orgonite that went wrong, that was a whole nother story. Oh. So the Atlantean show is tomorrow. Let's give me a second and I'll go ahead and pull up real quick for us. Sorry, guys, just give me a second. I'm pushing a bunch of buttons here. There you go, guys. Here's a preview.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, is there any correlation that you're aware of between the plant and like the emerald tablets or anything along those lines?
Well, I don't actually know much about the emerald tablets. I do know about the books written by Thoth, but he wasn't called Thoth to me. He was called Tehut. But I don't really know anything about any emerald tablets.
Well, can you tell us about Tehut then?
Right. Well, that's a big topic of conversation.
Yeah, that's one I'm interested in personally. So.
Okay. Well, Tehut, he came into our civilization at a time when my brother had just started developing the technologies. And basically, my brother was looking for a new place for our whole civilization to move to, because we were suffering from this group of nearby primitive people who would randomly raid our where we lived, run through the place naked, screaming and yelling, and do unpleasant things if any of us was caught out in the open, steal whatever we had, and it was very unpleasant. And so he was busy looking for a new place for us to go to and develop our civilization more, because he was getting this technology together. And one of the earliest technologies was the flying technology. So he was traveling around looking for somewhere, and he came across this place, and he could see a tall tower, and he could see a city. And he went and had a look from the nearby hills. But what he saw was very sad. He saw people basically carrying bodies to a big pit. And it looked like most of their people were dying. And he thought, well, he better not get too close in case it's some kind of disease or whatever. And so he was in the process of leaving. And he saw this man nearby to where he was also watching the civilization from a nearby hill. And this guy started waving to him and begging him to come over. and he decided it probably wasn't a safe thing to do, so he took off and was going to leave, but something made him return. He just felt such guilt and such sadness for this guy that he went and collected this man, and this was Tehoot, and Tehoot would actually return to this place after having been away, and he'd been studying at some other location under someone called the Great Teacher, and he'd returned and he'd seen the same thing as that my brother Uran had seen, and he was also of the opinion that he shouldn't go anywhere near the place. So my brother took him back, but didn't go straight to our village. He took him to a cave and just hung out there together, kind of get to know him, see if he was a safe guy to introduce, and also to see if either of them basically died, if they'd got whatever was going on in this very sad place. And they got on really well. They were both genius level, and Tehoot became a very big part of the way that the civilization developed. And much later on, when it was deemed safe to return to that area, the two of them went back and they collected anything they could that might have been useful in terms of knowledge. And but that was how Tehoot, who wasn't part of Tantal, became a fundamental part. He then went on to marry my grandmother, which is another story altogether. But yeah, so his knowledge was incredible, and the combination of him coming from this other civilization with some knowledge, and I have no idea what that civilization was, combine that with the knowledge of what Uran was coming up with naturally from just being a genius. Uran was the kind of like Tesla level thinker. And between the two of them, they just, the technology and the civilization just mushroomed from there. But when my grandmother was accidentally killed in the Nile, Tehoot decided that he didn't want to continue living, and he was just going to write in books all his knowledge, and he wasn't going to take any of the longevity anymore, and he was just going to pass away, and he wanted to join her. And so I have these memories of him in underground passages, busy writing out all these books. Some of it was like a physical book, and some of it was somehow getting it into a crystal. But he was just so determined before he passed on to write down everything he knew. So that's Tehoot in a nutshell, really.
Well, that falls into place pretty well with, what's known of him. So that's pretty incredible.
So I don't know when he started getting called Toth or Hermes Trismegistus or any of that, but he was always just Tehoot.
Oh, man. Now my picture's going out. All right. Oh, man, this internet sucks. I want to say thank you to Tatha Atlantean. Thank you for becoming a member on the channel. I really do appreciate it. Trying to get the picture back on my camera, but I don't know what's going on, guys. No. Oh, this is terrible. You know what? It is what it is. I gotta definitely get this fixed. All right, guys, I want to thank everybody for watching today. Tomorrow, same time, 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to have Liz on and we'll do the Atlantis stuff, man. Really awesome. I want to thank 8 Center for doing the Orgonite thing with us. He'll be back again next Monday. with another look into the orgonites. And man, we're just getting started with this stuff, guys. So I want to thank everybody who came in and watched today and hang out with us. Yeah, maybe it was a punishment. I don't know. But anyway, thanks, guys. Have yourself a great day, and I appreciate everything.